Where Winds Meet is one of the strangest game launches I've seen in a long time. On the one hand, you've got a huge wave of sponsored advertisements dressed up like honest reviews, and on the other hand, IGN gave it a 6. And people can't stop racing to make their "you can't spell ignorant without IGN" comments. And I'm not a huge IGN supporter. In fact, I typically go off of Steam reviews when making a decision. But here's the thing, I think in this case, IGN wasn't really wrong. In fact, if you follow their scoring scale, a 6 is pretty much where this game lands. And honestly, at its very best, Where Winds Meet might be a 7, even in their book. It's a good game. Sometimes it's even great, but it's not the earth-shattering revolution that so many paid reviews are trying to sell you. And before anyone jumps into the comments, no, this isn't just a hit piece. I do actually kind of like this game. I've enjoyed my time with it, but I do want to look at the game honestly without any sponsored BS nonsense trying to tell you that this game is just amazing and the reviewers got it wrong. But before we get into it, I do want to talk about what I did really enjoy with the game the most. So visually, it's stunning. The lighting, the landscapes, the atmosphere. This is all top notch. Not just for a free-to-play game, but for just a video game period. The art direction is absolutely on point. Is it doing anything super original? Not really, but everything looks amazing. Also, the soundtrack is on point as well. Combat animations are really cool to watch. And, you know, they did a good job with the boss fights as well. I enjoyed the boss fights. And the world overall, it looks good and it feels good to be walking around here. When I first saw this game come out on Steam, when I saw that it was free to play, I was immediately like, nope, not gonna do it. I've tried other free to play games and more often than not, it goes horribly. The monetization becomes out of control. Progression is locked behind whether or not you give them more and more money. They say it's cosmetics only, etc., etc. But then I started hearing a bunch of reviews about it, and that's what piqued my interest. So we do have to talk about this because it's part of the onboarding process for this game. There are a huge number of early reviews that were sponsored or financially incentivized. And I get it, okay? Creators do need to pay the bills, and there's nothing wrong with sponsorships. Everybody's done a Raid Shadow Legends commercial at this point. But here's the thing, these videos are not saying this is an advertisement for the video game. They're saying that they are reviewing the game honestly, and then they might mention somewhere in the video, usually several minutes in, I just wanted to mention that they sponsored this video, but I told them only if I can say what I want to say about it. And at that point it's like, no dude, this is an advertisement for the game.
This video was sponsored by the developers.
The developers reached out and asked if they could sponsor me to do another video sharing it with you, and I said sure, so long as I'm allowed to say whatever I want to say, positive or negative, and they agreed.
I also want to thank Everstone Studio for sponsoring this video.
Huge thanks to the team behind the game for sponsoring this video.
If you are being paid to talk about this game or play this game in any sense, you are advertising the game at that point. So your review is kind of null, in my eyes at least. Legally, they disclosed that they were sponsored, and that is all that is required. So I'm not saying they're being unethical or anything. The main problem I have though is that these videos are put out there as if they're just reviews from gamers, and they're not. They're not at all. They are advertising the game and only mentioning good things about it for some reason. And then if they do mention a bad thing, they'll be like, well, actually, you know, the menus might seem like they're kind of ugly and disgusting and, you know, microtransaction filled, but in reality, it's just that the game is so big and there are so many systems and people just don't understand how good this game is. Or they'll be like, oh, the PvP isn't really balanced, but it's free to play, so like shut the fuck up about it. You know, and it's like, bro, that's a valid complaint when people are saying that part of the game sucks, but they'll literally just brush off any attempt at criticizing this game, which is what I find especially frustrating, because it's one thing if you were like, yeah, the PvP sucks, but the single player is awesome. If they said something like that, okay, but I've just noticed people have been very dismissive of any complaints people have had about this game, to the point of like ridicule, like, how dare you? This game was given to us by the gods. One of the key things that made me notice this is because, I'd already played, I think 10 or 15 hours at that point when I was rewatching some of these videos. And I noticed a pattern, which is a lot of them had the same footage of the same early game boss fights, the same talking points, the same praise, almost like it was a script. In fact, most of them, when they got to the part where, oh, this is where I criticized the game. Watch out, guys. I'm about to really lay waste. And they do the thing about the menus. Most of them are just saying, oh, well, the menus aren't that great, but like they're working on it. And the thing is, if you go to any NetEase game, if you've ever played any NetEase game, it's always like this. It's like this for a reason, right? Like Diablo Immortal, Eve Echoes. I don't know about Marvel Rivals. I only played it a little bit, but NetEase Games has a very specific way they set up their menus, and it's designed for maximum cache extraction. And it's done in a way that's like intentionally confusing to get you kind of lost in the menus. And this is a strategy that I had read large stores like Walmart and Target will do this kind of stuff as well, where they'll rearrange everything and just put like different departments on the opposite ends, even though you would think they should be right next to each other. But they're doing it so you walk from one side of the store to the next, and you're more likely to make impulse purchases along the way. I've also noticed them like criticizing other people for having opinions about the game because they didn't play it long enough, which is crazy because all of the ones with the sponsored videos are literally showing you footage from the first 10 hours of gameplay, and they're just saying how this game is so groundbreaking and so much better than anything the West has done. But then the guy from IGN played for, I think it was 30 or 40 hours, and they're like, well, you can't really have an opinion on it after 40 hours. That's just barely scratching the surface. Meh. And it's like, dude, you don't have to play 100% of a video game to have complaints about it. I get it if it was like, okay, you played the game for 5 hours and you didn't like it. Like, okay, that's kind of jumping the gun. But if you've gotten at least, I'd say even halfway through it, even if you played 5 hours, like if you played 5 hours and you were like, the game didn't capture me within those 5 hours, like that's still a valid criticism because it's up to the developer to make you have fun from the get-go, and I think this game does that really well. I think the first 5 hours of the game, it really shows you what the game's about and it introduces you to the systems well. So I think if somebody gave up on this game in 5 hours even, it's like, okay, well, it wasn't for you. But the guy played through basically the whole story. So I think, like I said, I also disagree with the 6. I think it maybe should have been a 7, but he did play tank, so whatever. All I'm saying is it's weird that if you give it a good review after 10 hours and you're paid by the company, then, oh yeah, you must be right. But if your job is to give objective criticism of games and you played it for like 4 times that length and everybody just loses it, I think that's kind of weird.
Weird.
So let's real quick take a look at IGN's rating system. And here's what a 6 means. There's a good experience to be had, but you'll need to overlook major drawbacks. It's fun if you have nothing better to do, and it's not a must play. Like, okay, that is a little harsh for this game, right? So let's look at what a 7 would be by their metrics. A 7 is still a solid, worthwhile experience, but it lacks the outstanding qualities needed for a higher score like an 8. It can indicate a game with both strong and weak points. For example, it might have good combat, but a poor story, or it could be technically flawed, but still fun to play. Games scoring a 7 often don't push boundaries or excel in a single area, even if they are competent and fun to play, right? So I think that describes this game very well. And let's get into why I think it's not an 8 by their definition. These games leave us with something outstanding to remember them by, usually novel gameplay ideas. For single player or multiplayer, clever characters and writing, noteworthy graphics and sound, or some combination thereof. If the game has major complaints, there are more than enough excellent qualities to cancel them out. So I already admitted that I think the graphics and sound are great. I don't really think they have clever characters and writing. I think the writing's very mid. It's not bad, but I lean towards skipping or playing the dialogue at a faster pace because it's not that great. And then novel gameplay ideas. I haven't seen one thing in this game that I haven't seen in a dozen other games, and I don't think it's excelled at anything that it does. For example, with the combat, it's like, yeah, it's cool for an MMO, but for a single player game, it's below average. So I think it's a 7. I think it should have been a 7. So yes, IG was technically wrong by my book as well, but I'll keep going back to this. The guy mentioned he played tank, and I feel like that probably ruined his experience to some degree. So let's talk about the combat. It looks incredible, but it largely feels hollow to me. It reminds me of Black Desert Online because it seems like it's all spectacle with like cool animations, explosion, and style, but underneath the mechanics are pretty basic. Your gear score matters far more than your skill, and it makes gear grinding an obstacle to enjoying the game because it's like you get to these bosses that are supposed to be like Sekiro style, but then you realize, oh, I don't have my amulet upgraded to the highest level and my sword, and I need to go do these other little things to make sure that I can do that before I fight this boss. And I get it that it's an RPG and stuff, but it's like when you start looking at the things you need to upgrade your gear, you find that like, oh, I can go get a couple of these out in the open world. That's cool. And then you look at one of the other options and it's like, or I can get it in this gacha box that I have to buy. And that's definitely a red flag that we'll get into later. But we're talking about the combat. So another thing is that all enemies, it's the same thing. You just sit there and parry them until their stun meter goes up, and then you do your finisher and a few of the weapon skills. And all of the basic enemies are just like HP sponges that are pretty boring to fight, and there's not really any like strategic variation with any of this. It's basically the same thing of just like wait to parry, do the thing. And I get it. Sekiro has a similar loop, but Sekiro's combat is so much better. And you know what else Sekiro doesn't make you do that I hate in this game? It makes you button mash like way more than you should have to for a game about like swords and stuff. Like it feels more like a hack and slash at some points because the parry, it's like, yeah, that's just part of the button mashing because the timing window, even on legendary, is pretty generous. Like I definitely felt like I could just parry most of the time on legendary by spamming it around the time that the attack was gonna hit. But all of this button mashing, like man, my thumb has actually been feeling kind of strained from playing this game. So yeah, it's like it's cool that there's timing based, but it's like timing based mixed with button mashing. Like when you do stun them finally, you have to make sure you do all 4 of your weapon skills, and then I'm sure eventually 5, but it seems like right now it's time to where you're supposed to do 4. And then also be doing quick attacks constantly to just like get in little jabs throughout the fight. So it feels like you ultimately, like I bet you're pressing probably like 5 times as many buttons as you would in a game like Sekiro or even like Elden Ring or something. Like those games never made me feel like I had to smash the buttons really fast. Like yeah, you did have to do a perfect timed button press, but typically that perfect time button press was the challenge. Now it's that plus you have to button mash in between each of those. And I find that extremely annoying and unnecessary. Like it's just, to me, that's bad combat design. And that's why Sekiro's a 9.5 by IGN and this game's a 6. Because the best thing this game has going for it is flawed. And that's kind of my point, is that this game is just a carbon copy of a good Soulslike. Like a good Souls-like game doesn't have this problem. This is a problem that this game invented. I don't know why, because they basically copied the formula and then added a bunch of stupid mini games. But this game is clearly just a Souls-like knockoff with poor execution of the actual Souls-like element. Also, the boss fights are not tied to like anything else in the game, meaning like there isn't an enemy that's kind of like the boss you're about to fight. It's always that there's these like rinse and repeat guys you fight all the time. They have their own little attack patterns that are basically like they're always just gonna do the same like 1-2 attack. And then you get to these bosses that all of a sudden have a like 2-2-1 or 6 attacks and then 1 finisher. But nothing really like leads you up into that. It's just like you just have to basically fight the boss a couple times, see how many he does and in what pattern, and then it's just gonna be that over and over. So my other major complaint is that there's the whole gacha system. You can't just buy cool skins. You gotta roll for them. And some of these items can run into the hundreds or thousands of dollars. It's actually ridiculous. Like we were complaining about Diablo 4 and how you would have to spend $25 to get a cool armor set. This game just takes it to a whole nother level. I hate microtransactions in games overall. I would really rather just pay for the game. But we have to remember, this is a NetEase game. And if you followed their other titles from Diablo Immortal to Eve Echoes, you already know the pattern. At launch, oh, don't worry, there's no pay to win, no shortcuts, conveniently leaving out that their reward system is based on gambling and microtransactions. And then 6 months later, it's, oh, but what if we gave a little convenience boost? Hey, you know what would be really fun? If you had to gamble on progression with real money. That would be so fun, right? And it's so obvious like what's about to happen. Like they have an energy system that allows you to collect rewards from participating in PvP through either single player boss runs or group content, right? So if you want these rewards, oh, well just use your energy in here. You can have some free energy. And then you play a couple of those and you're like, oh, that was fun. I'm playing with my friends. We're doing stuff together. We're getting rewards that are better than the normal rewards. And then you run out of energy on a Saturday night or whenever you're playing. And it's like, oh man, you ran out of energy. You don't have any more energy. You can still play the thing. You just don't get the rewards, but you need more energy. And then you're like, well, how do I get more energy? Well, good thing you ask. Let's go over to the store. Like that's where it always goes, dude. Y'all are so dumb for not realizing that that's what the game is. It's all to get you into the store. So you go to the store and it's like, well, if you just get this little bitty battle pass, ooh woo, for $20, we'll give you some things that'll give you more energy and you can keep on playing. And it's like, oh man, that's so nice of you. And you gave this game to me completely for free. It's like, wake up, people. This is the plan. This was always the plan. I know not everybody played it, but Diablo Immortal, they did this. Like, they are the company behind that. And everybody knows that story pretty much. Like, it was super fun. And I played that game for probably 10, 15 hours, maybe 20, until I hit that as well, where it's like, this game's so good. And then you get to a boss and it's like, oh, well, your gear's just not good enough or whatever. And they're like, but you can upgrade your gear. It's like, well, how do I do that? And they're like, well, I'm so glad you ask. Just right this way into the store. One-time offer, 99 cents or whatever. You can buy this little thingy that you need. And you do it and it's like, cool, now I can fight this boss. And then you get to the next little, oh, well, now you need 5 of those thing, so you just give us a little $5, you can. So it's like, dude, it just keeps going. Like, it's an infinite scalable system of your progression will be tied to how much you spend. That's the way it is. That's the way it will always be with these kinds of games, because otherwise they're not going to make money. They're not going to make money off of just cosmetics. People paying $40,000 for a boat is not what's going to fund this game. It's going to be the people that have problems with impulse spending, problems with gambling addictions, and problems with stealing their parents' credit card and running up a bunch of fucking fees on them or overdrafting. It's actually ridiculous that people are acting like this isn't going to happen. So my next complaint, there's a lot of content, but most of it is not good content. They are mini games, checklist, time gates, hub world activities, an injury system for immersion, and more mini games. What's really crazy about this is it's actually the Ubisoft design, but no one's calling that out either. But there's just a ton of shallow distractions to keep you playing, and it's not because they're fun, but because the game needs you to slow down. They're padding it. If they took out all the dumb shit, this game would be 30 hours long, but they buried it all under 100 hours of just like dumb shit to do. So here's another thing, and this kind of goes back to the reviewers, the so-called reviewers that are actually advertisers, and they keep calling it an MMO, but well, technically it's not. It's like an MMO, but it's not really like an MMO, but it's so different and unique. Let's be real. This is a single-player open-world RPG with optional multiplayer features. You never need to engage in any of these. And a lot of these multiplayer features are laggy and shallow, like fighting one boss with 5 people, because whoever played a Soulslike game and was like, oh man, this would be really cool if there were 5 of us hitting him. Like, dude, people in the Dark Souls community talk down on people who use summons. In Elden Ring, you know what I mean? Or that need help with a boss. Like, it's so crazy. When I did one of those, it was like, it didn't feel like the boss was even really attacking any single one person, or like, we all just like were spamming attacks. And I get it was a lower level or whatever, but there's gonna be some artificial difficulty, I'm sure, in there, but it's all about the rewards and making you feel like you're playing an MMORPG. But the thing is, this is really a single player game. The best part of this game is when you're in single player mode. Yeah, the combat's cool or whatever for like the PvP, but it's way better in Naraka Blade Point. Like, Naraka Blade Point puts this game to shame when it comes to like PvP, I think, from what I've seen. But I think that they're calling it an MMO because it gives it this like shield, in the same way that like people forgive these free-to-play systems and grind because it's like, oh yeah, it's an MMO. But it's not an MMO. It's basically a single player game with some MMO elements. Like, nobody calls Elden Ring an MMO, but it has basically the same kind of features, you know what I mean? So it gets like the benefit of both not being an MMO and being an MMO at the same time. For example, if you were to tell one of them that the combat is just not up to par with Dark Souls games, they'd be like, well, it's an MMO, so like the combat isn't gonna be exactly like a single player game. So then you'll be like, oh man, the group content's really laggy, and the co-op is kind of weak, and the hub world barely works. And they're like, well, it's not a real MMO, it's basically a single player. Don't expect it to be like an MMO. So it's Schrodinger's MMO. It is an MMO when they need it to be, and it isn't when they, don't. So it's whatever, dude. Like, they're just trying to glaze this game like way too much. So where do I think this game is headed long term? Honestly, I think it's going down the exact same path as Black Desert Online. I think this game could have been called Black Desert Online 2. And you know what? It is better than Black Desert Online. I would rather play this hands down any day than Black Desert Online. It's a better game overall, but it's following the formula of just kind of copying other games that exist and looking really pretty while not really having a whole lot of substance, and then hiding upgrades behind the microtransaction store. I think there's going to be a diehard community behind it that'll stay with it for the next 10 or 20 years, however long they keep making content for it. I think that most people are going to drop off in the first month, maybe 3 months. I think when you finish the content, I don't think anyone's going to really want to grind the same bosses over and over. So they're going to have to keep their upgrade schedule, or whatever you call it. They're going to have to keep giving more content to keep people involved. I think that they are guaranteed going to be adding more and more monetization, and it's going to become more and more of an oppressive feature rather than a, oh, look at this cat I bought. Because that's what they're trying to market it as right now. It's like, oh, if we're only selling costumes, it's just a big old costume store. But it's like, yeah, but you're already doing the whole energy thing, which is a huge red flag. Huge red flag that they can basically benefit off of you running out of energy. This happens in so many games, and it's always the same. And right now, we're in the first month of this game coming out, but mark my words, this is going to be considered probably the best month, because it will not get drastically better. It will get much more expensive. I think that the loyal fans are going to defend this game no matter what, and it's going to become their whole life. And we're going to read a Reddit thread where they said they spent 3,000 hours playing this game in a few years, and they're going to say how they kind of regret it a little bit because they spent all their time playing it and da-da-da-da. You know, it's fine. Do what you want to do. I'm not trying to tell other people how to play video games and how to enjoy them or not. It's just quit acting like this game is this like new way for games to exist. We've had free-to-play games that are really fun, and they always end the same way, with aggressive monetization, and this game will likely be no different. So now that I kind of vented my frustrations, I want to bring it back around and remind you that this is still a good game. And for some people, this is going to be maybe their favorite game. And it does look incredible. And it has some cool boss fights. And there's a lot of fun to be had. I just think it's covered in a lot of kind of garbage content. I think that people will get tired of the combat if it doesn't evolve in some way. I think that the free-to-play myth is going to be chipped away at with little features that are gonna at first aggravate slightly and then frustrate and eventually make people leave the game, but not before they get way more than $70 out of them. Because if you look at games like Genshin Impact, the average user pays between $30 and $100 per month on that game. So this game being free to play, you know, if it had been $70, guaranteed there would not have been 9 million people playing on day one. I don't think it would have, and I don't think people would have reviewed it as positively. And then, you know, in a few months, it would go down to like $50 on sale. And then by next year, it would probably be around $30 and maybe 9 million copies sold in its lifetime. So it would have still been a successful game. And arguably, it could have been considered one of the best games if it didn't have all this microtransaction menu crap. But that's going to be its biggest complaint in the future, and I won't be the last person to talk about how this game pulled a fast one on the gaming community. I do hope that people start to look at reviews of games on YouTube a lot more critically, because as much as the so-called video game reviewers on YouTube love to complain about how biased modern game journalism is, they're paid sponsors of video games they're saying that they're reviewing. So just think about that a little bit, you know? Like, who is the mainstream reviewer nowadays? Because IGN definitely wasn't paid to review that game, because they wouldn't have gave it a 6 if they were. But all the people that are saying this game is so amazing seem to be paid by the people that put out the game. So just think about that. That's all I'm saying. This game's a 7, and that's what I think about it. But if you give me $100,000, I will change my review to a 10, just like the other YouTubers.